Hello.
Hello, lovely. Let me
Oh,
just let me just get you up on my screen.
it's
There
okay.
we go. Get rid of that. Hey,
Hey,
how
how are
are
you?
you?
Well, really crazy times. I've been spending a lot of time by myself and going through lots of stuff that I didn't have time to sit with for more than almost 2 years now. And yeah, it's difficult. Still getting my mind around it. Yeah, it's really some crazy stuff happening that I need to figure out on myself as well, and just about the relationship and situation we found ourselves in. Yeah.
None of this stuff is easy, is it?
No, not at all, not at all. And also, yeah, many of the ideologies and just the ideas around certain topics like twin flames and spirituality that are hanging around. And then diving into your own stories and the insights that I get from plants and the work that I did for myself, sometimes is really, yeah, it's brutally honest.
Mm,
And that it's not always as easy to face your fears at the same time,
yeah,
even when
yeah,
you're willing to and when you're really there and it's like, okay, I see it, that this takes a tremendous amount of courage now to see how I can implement it in my life.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I was having this conversation with a friend the other day, and I was just saying how I feel like the more I learn and the more I dig deep into this whole openness of what's available to us, it doesn't always get clear straight away.
Yeah.
It takes a while, and it takes a while for this information to settle.
hmm
And it's no different to my work. It's like I feel as though all of these things that we have access to, they're just tools, aren't they? They're literally just tools. And each one of these tools gives us something different. But ultimately, I feel like we're just trying to get back to the beginning with it all, which is so interesting. The idea of doing all the work that we do, really just to get right back to the very beginning.
It is. And at the same time, creating a new way as well. Or that's something that I feel very strongly on my side. So, okay, I would try to understand by going back to the roots. Just how do you implement it now today in a new direction, a new path? Because we're creating something new at the same time.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's huge. Like even yesterday, I had a very deep conversation with a friend as well, just to look back, and then even keeping um, things that are not recorded in history as we know it and we learn it in school, but just by keeping in count of what we know of Homo sapiens and the evolution from that cycle of humanity and how it like by finding solutions for the way we live in community and amongst each other, how it created the problems of today, but then at the same time how all these steps are necessary to get us to specific points of insight, and that it's really like forcing us now to again approach those problems with new insights and new solutions and just ways of navigating through life, and that it all comes together with an expansion in consciousness as well.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. It's all about perspective, right?
mhm.
It's about accepting and understanding that each time we choose to dig into another layer, what we're doing is accessing a different perspective, another opportunity to look at something in a different way and
Mhm.
with new eyes, if you like.
Yeah.
And then with those new eyes, you can consider different options, different ways of doing things that maybe you hadn't considered before. But unless we're brave enough to go to that place where we want to do the progression and we want to do the learning, then the eyes stay the same and we keep seeing the same thing. And then that way we don't move forward at all, do we?
Yeah, no, 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 not at all. Yeah, yeah. And we also came to the conclusion similar, but then as well, like embracing as well the dark and the light and just the full spectrum of the whole experience and how each part of the experience is really necessary. To even lose your way is so necessary to find your way again and to balance things out. And how it's like this really came to the conclusion of the unending symbol, the eight
Yeah,
on the side.
yeah, yeah,
Go into
absolutely.
positivity, and then you go back into questioning everything, and you always cycle back around a similar point. But then in
Yeah,
a way that you move upwards or downwards, just
yeah,
the way those how
yeah,
it works.
yeah. And I feel like for me, I just have to sit with the trust and the faith that even though sometimes it might feel as though you are going round in circles and you think, oh my God, why have I got to do this again? I thought I learned that lesson. But
Uh-huh.
I just have to sit with the trust that everything is exactly as it's meant to be. And that is my internal dialogue. When stuff starts to get a bit sketchy, then I have to just say to myself, everything is exactly as it's meant to be, and just surrender to that shit and go, oh, okay, I'm just gonna, yeah, sit with that idea for a bit.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Well,
I don't, people sometimes ask me, do you feel as though life has become easier for you the deeper you've chosen to go with your work and your understanding and your openness? And I always say, no, it doesn't get easier. It's just different.
mhm.
It's simply just different.
But then at the same time, from my experience, what I want to share on this is that I did get in point, and I'm only 33, that I already got into points of my life that are going into directions that I wasn't even able to imagine. In a way that things got already so much better than I ever was able to imagine or visualize when I was younger,
Yeah,
by going deeper and
yeah,
penetrating all the cycles that you find yourself in
yeah,
going.
yeah,
Only this is already quite a big motivation to simply just continue what we're doing, like, or
yeah,
if that's help.
yeah, absolutely. And it is important to keep on doing it. It's
Yeah,
really important because that's the point of it all, right?
I
That's
guess
the
so.
point
Yeah.
of soul evolution.
Hmm.
If we don't do the work now, we're gonna have to do it at some point.
Yeah, it's gonna cycle back in.
Yeah, because that is soul evolution. That's the point of it, to understand eventually how to just be in love, how to be love, how to embody love, how to offer love, how to just connect with love in every single moment of your life, regardless of whether it's a tricky moment, especially if it's a tricky moment. The point of soul evolution, as far as I can tell, is to get to that place where all you are is love.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
that takes some doing,
it
but
is. Hmm.
we will all have to do it at some point, because I believe that was the purpose of it. And
Yeah.
if we don't do it in this life, then we're going to have to come back and we're going to have to do it in another life. And yeah, of course, some people are not ready for this idea that love is literally all this is about.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's okay. It's okay to not be ready, but at some point, every soul will be, in my belief.
No, I totally agree with that. I have nothing to add to that.
Yeah,
Definitely the journey on a fluffy cloud. Love.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
So, like how now to share with the audience as well, is how was your life actually prior? Because you also have been through a lot, and you've even been writing books about this as well, about your own life story. And like to see you here now, shining and so bright, and like really reflecting the love that we just have been talking about. Like, how did you come to the point today of what you're doing and how you managed to express all of this?
Good question. So I suppose my story of understanding something beyond what you could describe as the physical reality of life began when I was 10 years old. And my best friend at my middle school had a sister who transitioned when we were 10. She was 11. And my friend's mum took her to see a medium, really famous medium called Ina Twig. And I remember my friend came to school the next day after they'd had this family reading where they wanted to connect with the daughter that had passed. They were quite an open family anyway, they were Turkish. And they wanted to connect with the daughter and just get some information, ensure that she was okay, just continue with the sense that they had that now she was in a good space. And my friend came to school the next day and told me all about this reading. And I remember sitting there just going, yeah, I know all that. I understand all that completely. And I also know that one day I'm going to be doing that. And it was such a natural thought. And it wasn't a surprise, and I didn't share it with anyone, but I just knew that I'd been told in a way which was outside of my own mind that this was something that could happen. Human beings were able to connect with another realm in this way to help people. I knew that was a thing. So that was when I kind of like just understood. And then from that point on, I always understood that spirituality was having an openness to alternative dimensions and that people could communicate in this way. But it didn't really have a big impact on my life until I was in my 20s and I had my first psychic experience with my nan, who'd passed several years earlier. I didn't have a particularly close relationship with her when she was alive. And I was walking my potbelly pig at the time. I lived on a farm. And I was walking my pig across the fields with my cat, because he used to come for a walk too. And I heard this voice say, Georgie. And I like look round and I was like, that was my nan. And from that moment on, I had a constant dialogue with my nan. Again, not something that I shared, and I sort of kept it to myself, but to a degree pushed it to one side. And eventually I had to embrace this side of myself and allow it to come to the forefront and not keep pushing it away and ignoring that it existed, because what would be 20 years ago now, I became physically very, very sick. I had chronic fatigue syndrome, I had ME, I was in bed for 3 years, really, really poorly. And I then recognized what I needed to do. And I recognized that I needed to start uncovering what my gifts were and what it meant to me as a person, and looking at alternative ways of supporting myself in a non-conventional way, if you like. So I suppose I've spent 20 years on that path, learning about what that means, learning about the physical body, the emotional body, learning about how important it is for me to connect with my guides, to listen to my guides. And obviously everything came to the forefront of this becoming a part of my work in 2018 when I started doing QHHT, when it really was shown to me that this was meant to be my path. And obviously your beautiful wife did the Akashic reading for me and told me all about why I had such a connection with QHHT and how Dolores had been my mentor in our Atlantean life together. So when I started to study QHHT and I first started watching Dolores videos and I was consuming the material, I already knew it all. I was just remembering it. I was just bringing it into this reality. Because obviously that was the point in my soul contract that I agreed I was going to do it this time. And so, yeah, the journey's been incredible, but it's definitely been more expansive since I've been doing this work.
Yeah, and must have been quite a challenge as well to accept all of this. It's a whole journey, and yeah, to implement it in today as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, like what were the reactions of your family and friends and like your close environment around
Yeah,
this?
it's a good question. It's a really good question. The people close to me, I think, have always known that there was a side to me that wanted to explore something uh, other than what people generally want to explore. And so they weren't entirely surprised. Having said that, I'd spent a good deal of my life working in corporate recruitment and corporate financial services. So then to suddenly say, oh, I'm not doing that work anymore. I'm now really reinventing myself, if you like. Um, I think it was quite a shock to them to start with. And, and also the whole sort of um, feeling from my point of view, if you start putting yourself out there on social media, showing this reinvented version of yourself. And I was getting messages from people going, are you all right? They were just thinking, who is this new George? Who is she? We don't recognize her. She used to wear a suit and work in an office, and now she's talking about past lives. What's happened?
Yeah,
And you just have to be prepared to go through that phase and say, yeah, I know you don't recognize this version of me, but you will get used to it.
yeah, oh, beautiful. That's really lovely said, actually.
Yeah, it's it's a it's an interesting it's an interesting experience to observe other people's opinion on you when you choose to start being honest about who you really are. I'd hidden who I was for so long, and I suppose tried to disconnect from that version of myself because I was worried about what people were going to say. Were they going to think I was crazy? Um, and it just takes a bit of bravery. But I feel as though I didn't have a choice. I didn't have a choice because in order for me to get spiritually, emotionally, and physically well, I had to accept that this
Yeah.
is something that I needed to embrace. Mm,
And even that it means challenging belief systems and structures or ideas that other people that you love around you,
mm,
that they hold on to life, or like the way they see or perceive life.
yeah,
You are more than value to express your own expressions and the things you experience and see and
yeah,
perceive as well, you know?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
wow, really beautiful. And
Thank you.
what is the difference then between QHHT and other types of hypnosis that we know?
Good
It's
question.
thing that comes from Dolores Cannon, if I'm right. No?
That's right, yeah. So Dolores created QHHT, interestingly enough, off of the back of a mistake, really. Um, she was working with her clients in traditional hypnosis. She had a kind of a military background. Her husband was in the military, and they worked with clients who came to them for trauma, a lot of trauma-based things, the normal routine habits. And one day she was working with a subject, and this subject started to access a past life. And Dolores was so curious. I mean, she's an insanely magical human being, and she was so curious about what she'd discovered. And from that point on, aside from the fact that there was periods of her life where she was taking care of her husband, she was very drawn to wanting to understand what this work was, and devoted her life to it, really, and connecting with what Dolores calls the subconscious, which other modalities call the higher self or the oversoul or Christ consciousness. This amazing connection that we have with an infinite unity consciousness. She realized that working with this energy could heal people. So it was interesting that when we work in this way, what we do is when we access past lives, it plays a part in the session itself. And it certainly is something that people enjoy. But really, the core of the work is connecting directly with the higher self and having that direct conversation with that part of a person, and really getting to the bottom of what's going on for them. So I feel as though QHHT is different to other hypnosis, because a lot of other hypnosis therapists don't work in theta. They don't work at the deep level that we do. They choose not to work at that deep level because they're worried about it. They don't always like to take clients that deep. But when I'm working with somebody, they're under for 3 hours. And in that time, obviously, we're accessing soul memories that are appropriate for that person, that has information that will offer, I always describe it, the puzzle pieces to their soul,
Yeah.
and offers them this deeper understanding of who they are as a soul, not just the person they are today, the one that they are now, but gives them that opportunity to see all the, whatever appropriate journeys there are that they need to explore. And there's so much more that comes from that experience that's not just curiosity. People want to know about their past lives. What have I been before? Who was my husband? Where have I lived? What have my gifts been? And that's all really, really interesting. But we can do so much deeper work, from finding out where traumas come from, why somebody is still connected to trauma from a past life. And it's so clever that when we go back and we explore these past lives in a safe way, any trauma that stayed energetically connected to a person, we can release them from that when they're under,
Yeah.
So I had a lady that worked with me this week, and she came to me with a number of different physical pains in her body that she just couldn't get answered to at all. And as it turned out, when I took her under and I worked with her, we went through 5 past lives, and 2 of those past lives were where she'd had physical trauma on the body in the areas where she was experiencing the pain in this life. And she messaged me this morning to say those pains have entirely gone now.
Yeah. Then it really works wonders, huh?
Mm, yeah. And I feel like QHHT is different because obviously we're working in the quantum field. We're getting all those tiny quantum bits of information that are wandering around that, in everyday lives, we don't always believe we can access.
Mm-hmm.
But when somebody's in this super relaxed state, and hopefully the ego is quiet over there somewhere, the information that comes through is just incredible. It's life-changing. I always say to people, it's life-changing.
It's almost like you really take a couple of filters away to perceive a deeper part of reality in a way, no?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
you-
absolutely. And we're working with the higher self energy, you know, we trust that that part of us, who that energy that's been part of every single soul experience, every single soul journey we've ever had, you know, it's impossible to disconnect from this Christ consciousness. It's impossible. So that part of us, that energy source, that pool of information is what we work with in these sessions. And that's why it's so expansive, because basically it brings with it all of the answers that somebody is ready for. And I feel like it's important to also add that the vibrational frequency of the information that comes through when somebody's under, when they're in this relaxed phase, that information is vibrating at the exact frequency that that person is vibrating at on that day, in that moment that they come to me. Obviously, like attracts like. So what they receive when they're under, I never have to worry about whether they're going to be able to comprehend it, because I know they will, because it's an exact match to what they need in that moment. It's on point every time. And I always say to people, you know, it's never going to be more than you can comprehend, but it's never going to be less than you need. And I feel that's also what's different about this hypnosis therapy, that we are working with that specific energy. The words in the script that I use to take someone under, they're programmed with the consciousness of the higher self. So that is, I feel, that's what makes it different.
Yeah, wow. That's really interesting because it's a complete different approach than what people actually know around hypnosis, or the image that is there out in the world around hypnosis.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
do you notice as well, like that there is, because this resembles a lot to me, like what I experience with my work with plants as well, that you will always get exactly what you need, and maybe not what you want, but
Yeah.
just exactly what you need and exactly what you can handle. And even though that many people are fearful towards letting go of the control around that whole situation and that story, and even like that it can be very intense sometimes, the things that come through and the information you need to work with. But then afterwards, there comes a period as well of implementation and integration. Like, is this something you notice as well with people that go through your sessions?
Yeah.
Also have work to do after the insights that they gain from the work with you?
Yeah, so Dolores, I work in the traditional way that Dolores always worked. I know not all QHHT practitioners do that, because some devote a specific amount of time to a session, like 4 hours. I work with my clients for the whole day, and we don't have an end time,
Oh,
because everyone's unique. Everyone needs something different. So I am a purist when it comes to Dolores' work. And what she helped us to understand is that it's really, really important, after we've worked with somebody, that they listen back to their hypnosis recording. Everything gets recorded when they're under. It's like dreaming, you know, when you come round from a dream, you won't necessarily remember all the detail. So it's all recorded. And my guidance is they listen to that recording 3 times immediately after we've worked together. For the next 3 days, listen to that recording, because when somebody listens, it gives the conscious mind the opportunity to settle with the experience that's happened. Because, you know, we know what the ego is like. That little voice can go, that wasn't real, you made all of that up. But when they listen back to their recording and they hear their own voice describing the lives that they were in minute detail, and they hear their own voice offering the assistance and the guidance from the higher self, there's no denying that that experience took place.
yeah.
And so listening to the recording is the integration. You know, I always say to people, I've no idea what this is going to look like for you afterwards. The same way as I've no idea what's going to happen in a session. We just have to roll with this. But I
Yeah.
do know that whatever happens after the session, as you integrate, it will be exactly as it's meant to be. You just have to trust it, you know. And some people will contact me a couple of days later and say, oh, I'm feeling this way, or I'm feeling this way. Sometimes I don't hear from people for months. And then they'll come back to me and say, oh my God, Georgina, my life's completely changed. So you're right. There is an integration process that takes place, but it's unique to the individual. And so I never try to describe what that's going to look like because I have no idea.
Yeah, I really find it beautiful how you embrace the individuality, or like just the way that everybody has their own unique approach to bring it into their life and work their way through it. Because I believe it brings a tremendous amount of freedom and space for somebody to, yeah, just take it on their own terms and their own time and in
Yeah,
the way they like to process it, which is a
yeah.
beautiful way to approach it.
I
Yeah.
think, thank you. I think, well, it's Dolores' way, you know. I think to be honest with you, I do very little in a session, aside from the fact that obviously I've learnt the technique and my voice does what it needs to do. I'm offering the space to somebody within the 4 hours that we're talking before we even start the hypnosis. I'm creating a trust bond with them. But really, I do very little aside from guide them. Um,
Mhm.
and it's down to how much they can surrender to the
Mhm.
experience. Um, and again, that's entirely unique. I can't make somebody relax any more than they're able to relax. I can create the right space, I can make them, help them to feel safe. But at the end of the day, you know, what somebody is ready for is is exactly what they bring to the session.
Yeah.
And again, that's why it is unique. That's why it's really important to not have an expectation. I always say to my clients, look, I know that you might have intention around what you want to experience. That's great. Bring your intention, bring your focus. But I am going to say to you that you're going to have to let go of any expectation. Because,
Yeah.
like you said at the beginning, we don't always get what we want, but we will get what we need.
Mhm. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And it's not always as nice to hear as you would like to hear it as a position as a client as well.
It's not always what they want to hear. It's not. And you know, I feel like that's been something that I've had to accept from working with people, you know, that acceptance around trusting that what somebody receives is what they want to receive, is what they receive. And even if they do come with all of these ideas of past lives that they want to go back to, or they want to have galactic interaction or whatever it is, I have to also support them if that isn't what they get, you know, and helping somebody to understand that you actually, right now, as much as you love the idea of connecting with your galactic soul family, as much as you might want to bring through channeled information, as much as you might want to bring forwards your light language, if it doesn't happen, it's because it's not meant to happen right now. And for some people, yeah, that can be disappointing. But
Yeah.
it's also about supporting the person with that thought process afterwards and helping them to understand that nothing's failed. It
Mhm.
hasn't failed. It's just that what you're receiving right now is exactly what you need. And that's
Yeah.
not always easy.
No, it is, but then you do a lot as well, huh? Instead of thinking that you don't do so much. It's a tremendous amount of responsibility to hold space for people. You need quite a capability and skills in listening as well to be able to be so open and willing to learn and to really like bring this kind of difficult news sometimes as well to your clients.
Mm.
Or really try to open them up to specific things that they might not be so open to from the beginning on.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
Yeah.
actually it's quite some responsibility and skills to do the work that you're doing.
Thank you. I've definitely learnt the value of listening, that's for
Yeah.
sure. You know, I spent about 4 hours listening when I'm first with a client, and I don't feel like many people get that in their lives. We
Mm,
don't we don't often have a chance. You know, I encourage them to talk to me about their whole entire current life, from their earliest memories all the way through to the version of them that exists now, and to take them the time to reflect on everything they've ever gone through, um, in a non-judgmental, safe space, without a time. You know, we don't look at our watches. It doesn't matter how long it takes. And that in itself is just such a wonderful thing to offer people. And I always get the feedback of, oh, I was a bit worried about talking about my whole life, but now I realize I have been through a lot, and people share things that they've never shared with anyone before. Um, and they have that chance to reflect, and really acknowledge what pain they've experienced. Um, and we don't get to do that very often.
yeah, that is a part of our culture as well. That is time is money. You have to be busy and active in your life. Uh, we already learn it from school. Like you have to be studying, and like, but when is the time that we get a moment in life that we really just can stand still?
Mhm.
Like go within and try to learn about who we really are and why we are experiencing specific things and gaining insights just to learn to understand yourself better. And it's almost like there is no place from the culture that we've been grown up in, or like that is not something that is demanded or necessary even to live a fulfilled life.
Mm.
So I think it's really wonderful to see that this is coming back more and more. Or is it maybe that this is kind of our line of work with the more spiritual sides in life? I don't know.
Yeah.
But in a way, I kind of start to notice that this is getting more and more a platform in our modern world as well. That we are getting aware of the need to understand ourselves better and the things we go through. And
Mm.
yeah, there's a tremendous amount of healing after all those decades, maybe hundreds of years. I don't know how long it already has been, that we really didn't had any awareness around the necessity of having this space for ourselves. Huh?
Yeah. Because people are getting sick.
Yeah. And that,
People are becoming much less balanced, with, like you've described, that busy, overstimulated lifestyle. And I feel like for me, especially, you know, a lot of clients that come to me, sadly, a lot of them come to me as a last resort.
yeah.
They, you know, there's a percentage of people who come to me who are already spiritually open, and they want that experience because they're curious about past lives. Um, but there's a big percentage of people who come to me who have gone through, conventional avenues to get better, to feel better, and those avenues have failed them for whatever reason. And a lot of people come to me as a last resort because they just don't know where else to go, and they are clinging to the hope that there's something else that's a little bit left field that perhaps they've never thought of before. And I do feel that for a lot of people, they have to get to that almost desperate state before their mind is open enough to even imagine that there's something like past life regression that can help them, they have to get to this desperate state, which is sad, you know? And once they've got to that place, it's almost as though they've surrendered and they've gone, okay, bring on whatever. I don't care anymore. I just want to feel better. And with that sense of I just surrender, that's exactly where they need to be in order to do the piece of work that's necessary.
And also to open up, maybe to the
Yeah,
things they haven't perceived or thought about yet. So you need to break out of the cycle or through the cycle, out of the
yeah,
box.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
I
It's
would say that it's actually also very valuable, almost to embrace, to go to this very dark part where you're like, so, yeah, out of solutions, that you really don't know where to go anymore, besides only letting go and opening up, see
yeah,
what is still possible.
yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. Yeah. I think that, you know, I feel as though more people are open to this work now, which is a really good sign. But I also feel as though the ego, the fear voice that is part of all of us, um, is really coming to the forefront of a lot of people's lives. And it's a piece of work that I'm personally very interested in at the moment. It's kind of my most recent book is all about understanding the ego. And I think that probably there's about 5% of people that I've ever worked with that haven't had the ego in control of their choices. Even people who are and have been on a deep spiritual journey for a long time, it feels like for me, they don't fully understand what that part of them is, what the ego is, what that internal dialogue is. And it's something I feel really passionate about at the moment, of helping people to understand that internal dialogue and how to work with it, you know, how to how to listen and how to really appreciate the effect, the part that it plays in their lives. And before I did QHHT, I didn't understand what the ego was, you know. I thought the ego is that bravado, that pumped up version of ourselves. That's what I thought ego was. And
Yeah.
then it wasn't until I started working with people and understood, oh, the ego, that's the fear voice. That's the thing that stops them from relaxing. That's the voice that tells them after the experience they made all of that up. You know, how do you find that when you work with clients and you know and in relationships and conversations, how do you talk about the ego with people?
Well, in a way, I see it as it is a part of our nature, and it has been for a long time around humanity as well. We've been in the wild, and like it's the kind of thing that kept us alive and brought us to the point where we are standing today.
Mm,
But then at the same time, you have to learn that it is not something that we actually identify with, because I notice that many people at a certain phase are still identifying themselves with this kind of inner dialogue or the voice that we call the ego.
mm,
But then at the same time, I also have a feeling that there is a need to learn to have a coexisting or a coexistence with your inner child almost, that I really better get to a point of the inner child and connect it a bit to the ego as well.
yeah.
And that the way you need to start to nurture and teach it at the same time,
Mm,
and then you move on top of that in a way. But
mm,
there's no way of discarding it or trying to erase it, because it is a part of our nature, and we just need to develop a different relationship if we want to grow or expand our awareness around who we are as a human being, and unique individual. And if you really want to start to apply things that are out of the box that the ego has created, then we have to almost nourish it like a child, to make it comfortable and make it aware of, like, yeah, but these are also kind of things that we need to do in life to be able to continue or to evolve, or yeah, to
Mm,
become who you need to be in a
yeah,
way.
I agree with you. And this book that I've just finished writing, all of the information was channeled, and it wasn't information that I've ever read before. And I had this whole explanation offered to me around um, why the ego was created as being part of each and every soul, each and every living thing. And it was shown to me as offering polarity to the point at which is love, and that the ego is fear, pure fear, and it offers a point of polarity to the point which is love. Without the ego, we wouldn't recognize love, because we'd have to see the difference, light and dark, sound and silence. And it was so interesting the way that I was shown this information, that the ego was offered as a choice, and the choice was around, at some point, each and every soul in their evolution would have to choose love over fear. But without there being another option, there would be no choice. And so the growth has to come from having the option of listening to the fear voice of the ego, and having the option of just listening and being with love. And it was so clever the way it was shown and offered to me, because I had this whole question around, well, why do we have to have the fear voice? Why can't all of it just be love? And this was what I was shown. It's like, well, no, because you have to grow, and you have to, if there is no choice, there's no option, then how are you going to grow? Because you're already going to be in this space where everything is love.
Uh,
And yeah, and I was just like, oh, okay, I get it now.
yeah, that is really necessary to have the contrast, actually. Yeah, something that I start to perceive as well. And even though as simple as it is or sounds, it's just a symbol, yin and yang. You know, how important this polarity is actually to create dynamic into our existence. It's almost like the driving engine of the experience that we call life. Like, you wouldn't know the other one without the opposite side.
Yeah,
And you can see it coming back in so many things in life, that you
yeah,
wouldn't really appreciate or be able to live in richness if you haven't known poverty. Like, what will it be to explore real love if you never known what it was to be lonely in the
yeah.
first place,
Mhm.
and so on and so on. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, that's what I started to call to embrace the full spectrum of the life experience in a way,
Mm,
and to be grateful for all the parts instead
mm,
of trying to fight it and to keep yourself in this inner battle almost.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
almost like the phase that I saw myself going through, and I can see it in other people as well. It's like this inner battle of not accepting the shadow part and wanting to be in the light. And yeah, it's a constant battle within, but it's as soon as you embrace this full spectrum and you start to see it as an engine, it becomes a curiosity
mhm,
and something you can work with, something you can observe, and you can reflect in all kinds of different dynamics that you encounter with yourself, within, in relationships.
yeah,
Yeah, you name it, just in the world outside around you, also in nature.
yeah,
There's opposite elements. Just to give you the experience, what would it be like to have
yeah,
constant days and you never know what cold was?
Yeah.
you know?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I see it all the time in my sessions, when working through past lives. And it's really interesting how the soul chooses these experiences, obviously to learn, but when I'm working with somebody and they're under, I'll generally work through um, important day to important day in their life. So they'll be dropped into a space, and then when we've understood what the life is, who they are, I'll ask them to move to an important day in that life and tell me what's happening, just to condense time, really. And we'll move through these important days and gather all of this information. And textbook is, I'll move them to the final day of the life, and they'll experience that final day. And I'll move them into spirit, into the alternative realm. And from that alternative realm, I'll ask them to see the life that we've just explored from a different perspective, because they are then just completely surrounded by love. They can look at the whole life that we've just traveled through, and I'll say to them, what did you learn in that life? And they're very simple statements that usually offered. I learned loss. I learned forgiveness. I learned hope. I learned envy, jealousy, these learnings that we give ourselves as a soul, and all of the experiences that we put in our soul contract before we come here to support the learning that we're choosing to have, and the purpose, obviously. And we'll work through that life, and then we could go to another life, and the learning that they've chosen in that other life will be the entire opposite of what they've just described in the life that we've gone through. There will be very clear polarity between a poverty-stricken life and then a life that's been full of everything a person can need. And it's so interesting when you ask the person, what did you learn in that life? And they're like, well, I learned that having everything didn't make me happy, but from the poverty-stricken life, they might have learned how to be grateful with a very small thing. And it's just that it really shows you how we grow, how the soul grows with these opposites.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that brings me to another question as well. And something that I encountered often in the past 2 years is, and I'm mostly from friends, because for me it's been quite a challenge as well. Like we mentioned in the beginning of our conversation, like how is your environment thinking about it, reacting to the choices that you're making, and like how would you explain to such a person what the importance is of even diving into past lives? Because it's something that I heard often is that, but why always go back to the past, or why clinch to the past, or what is even the point of all of this? And I think we covered quite a lot already in our conversation. But how do you deal with this kind of questions and conversations from the world around you?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel Dolores always said, don't become a past life junkie. And I feel that what she meant by that is do the digging. When you travel through past lives, what you're really doing is gathering information. You're gathering multidimensional information. And I feel like as human beings, we are often looking for answers. And in past life regression hypnosis, that's exactly what you get. You get answers. There could be something in your current life now which is challenging, it could be an emotional feeling, it could be a sense, it could be a physical condition in the body. And you might have done a lot of investigation around what this is that's going on for you. But you might not find the answers, because the answers may well be linked to something that you've gone through in a past life. And unless you take that time to explore and investigate what the soul journeys are that you've had before, you can't say that you fully understand yourself.
Yeah.
You can say that you understand the aspects of yourself which you've explored so far, but past lives offer so much more. They offer us the opportunity to understand why we're drawn to certain subjects in our life, why we feel the way that we do about certain people, why we have an underlying emotional response to certain situations. And it may not be obvious from the things that you've gone through in this life. It may not be to do with your childhood in this life. It may not be to do with your, your upbringing, your growth in this life, because we are energetically connected to every other version of ourselves that ever existed. There's no such thing as time. So I feel like, in answer to that question, the real value in exploring past lives is simply to understand yourself better on every level, and
Almost like
brings
yeah.
it brings people so much peace.
Yeah, it's almost like an overview in a way that you get it. It's almost like if you see this live that you're watching through a microscope in a way, and you're really zooming into like this tiny detail.
Yeah.
And or like now I'm speaking from my own experience, because I've been for a long period I've been focused on now and this lifetime and what to heal and from childhood and so on. Or even this layer of reality opened up to me.
Mm.
And then it was all of a sudden that you step away from the microscope, and that you get to see a bigger picture, and to understand even in a broader way
Mm.
actually is really going on multiple
Yeah.
levels. But then
Yeah.
it's also important to teach people to perceive a new way of seeing reality as well, and time as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it can bring a lot of clarity to people's current life now, because we can explore the relationships that have been part of our previous lives, the regurgitating cycle of karma. And people often come to me, and they could be having a really tricky relationship in their current life, and one that they just are finding difficult. And I can sense when somebody brings a relationship to me which has a karmic value attached to it. And oftentimes we'll find, when I take the person under, that character that's in their current life, and I say character because it is just like this theatre play, the character that they're struggling with in their current life, we may well get to see that character being part of a past life. And we can ask questions around, why did they come together again in this life? What is it that they didn't learn the last time from each other? What is it that they put in their soul contract as an agreement as to why they're coming back together in this life? And once people have gone back and they've seen this, they see the reasons why they've come back together in this life, and really what they need to achieve to find balance and harmony and peace in this relationship, they can look at it from an entirely different perspective. And they can look at it from the point of view of, oh, okay, so I understand what I need to learn. I understand why we're together in this life. I get that now. So perhaps I can be the instigator of looking at this relationship in a different way. And that in itself is, it's incredible.
Yeah, and then in essence, we can actually come to see that no matter what the story is, no matter what the situation is, that it's mostly actually, in essence, a part of or disbalance or imbalance.
Yeah,
And it's just about like how can we achieve a balance again
yeah.
within the situation that we find ourselves in it, and that this
Mhm.
is something we can take away for each human being.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's really interesting.
yeah,
Well, maybe also to emphasize, like Dolores Cannon wasn't spiritual at all as well. Like she wasn't looking for these kind of experiences, or yeah, what was her approach actually to all of a sudden diving into this unknown topic for herself? 'Cause,
mm,
I don't think it was by will that she, yeah, got into this. That was rather by accident.
yeah, yeah. I don't think it was. It was obviously part of her soul contract because, the impact that she's had, or she had in that particular life. Um, but I don't feel like she set out for that. She set out just to help people as a normal hypnosis therapist would have done. And then with her curiosity and she had she had an approach which was all about questioning. She always wanted answers. And I feel like that curiosity was what motivated her to keep on digging deeper, to ask more questions. And then it became this enormous, thing that it is today. But she had quite a religious upbringing, um, a traditional religious upbringing, from what I can understand. She went to Bible classes when she was a little girl. But she always questioned that type of religion. And I don't think that from the things that I understand about her, that never felt as though it was enough. And it's almost as though, in this life or that life, she was given all of the answers within her work and within the 19 books that she ended up writing. So I feel like she got some answers.
Yeah, wow, amazing.
Mm,
And then, yeah, now also, and then what she discovered as well was like even civilizations that are not registered in our human history as well, and many mythological or like no parts of memories from people from other lives that we classify as mythological or legends and so on. And like, how do you bring this to your clients if they maybe weren't even aware of these kind of topics? Like, how do you explain these kind of experiences to people?
I
Like
don't.
Atlantis, Lemuria, dragons, and yeah,
I don't. I
uh,
don't. I don't explain it to them. Um, if it's the format of a QHHT session is actually quite strict. There's
mhm,
certain things that we are encouraged to share with people, which will be seeing all life experiences as lessons, helping them to understand the soul contract, helping them to understand what karmic relationships are. But really, Dolores always discouraged us from talking about curiosity subjects. And although she obtained this information through her work, we have always been discouraged, if you like, from sharing that information with somebody unless they bring it up. Um, we really are just facilitators of a technique. We're not there to guide people specifically through information or contents that they may be researching themselves outside of the session. If, of course, they have past lives which are, I don't know, galactic, which are off planet, or we access civilizations that they haven't explored before, then when I bring them round and we talk about their experience, I'll talk about that with them, but I won't ever offer my opinion.
Yeah.
I won't ever offer my learning, even though I might understand or have access to more information than they received. I won't share that with them. I'll simply talk to them about what it is that they currently know and what they've been offered.
Yeah.
Because I'm in those sessions, I'm not a teacher.
Yeah. And that's actually a part that you just let be, actually, in a way that you just offer it to your client. Like, this is the information that came out, and you just give them their own space and own time to do whatever they want to do with it,
Yeah.
where they can give it a place. So in a way, it's a very grounded technique. Eh?
Very.
Yeah.
It really, really is. Dolores never wanted it to be cosmic. Her a statement that she offered us all the time is no bells and whistles. And we're not allowed, I'm not allowed to wear perfume in a session in case it creates some memory for somebody. I could wear a perfume that perhaps somebody that they didn't particularly enjoy spending time with in their life wore, and it would bring back all these memories. I can't burn incense in my room. I'm not really supposed to have any music on. It's supposed to be a pretty clear space with nothing of my personal character in it, because I am there to offer somebody an experience. I can't direct, I can't lead, I'm there helping them to move through an experience by asking questions. But the way that we work is we have to be very, very careful about the questions that we ask when somebody's under. I have to ask open questions so that they offer information. So it's actually a very strict technique, and it is very, very grounded. Because Dolores, she wanted people to understand that this isn't really for curiosity, this is for healing. This
Yeah.
is to help people to feel better. This is to get to the root causes of why they don't feel good. And she always guided us away from curiosity questions. I say to people before they work with me, bring a bunch of questions, things that you want answers to. When you're under, I'm going to direct these questions to your higher self. But if they bring a whole bunch of curiosity questions, I have to guide them towards, we're not using those. It's about how do I move forwards in my life right now? What's blocking me right now? What is causing me to feel this way? Why am I having these emotions? It's all about understanding the space that somebody's currently in, but getting the multi-dimensional information to answer those questions. So it is really grounded. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really blown away by our conversation today.
Are you?
Yeah, I just know some fractions from what QHHT is, and also a little bit of my own experiences with my wife then.
Yeah.
Uh, but she developed a completely her own style and own way as a child with her mom. But yeah, and then as well, like even before I knew her, I also encountered Dolores Cannon, her work here and there on some YouTube videos to listen to a couple of her speeches and
Yeah.
talks that she had. Yeah, it's I'm really triggered. It would be lovely actually to have the opportunity to sit with you a day as well in the future.
I'd
So
love that. Yeah, I'd love that. And I think it's interesting because Dolores and QHHT is I feel like it offers the opportunity for non-spiritual people who perhaps are not on a spiritual path, if you like, to come and access something which could be the beginnings of a spiritual opening up. And I
yeah,
see that quite a lot. And it's not too far in one direction to put the non-spiritual people off, but it's far enough, it's as far as you can possibly go in the direction of multidimensional information, which is enough for the people who are on a spiritual path to still want to invest in it. So I feel like you know, it offers something quite different to what lots of other modalities do because it's so accessible to everyone. And I suppose it comes around to the beginning of our conversation that the information somebody receives when they're under is vibrating at the same frequency at which they are. So it's always going to be on point for them, which is unusual.
bringing back to balance as well.
Yeah,
Even if people are completely not spiritual, it opens them up to the multidimensionality of our nature.
yeah,
But then in a way, people that might be really off into spirituality and maybe floating a bit too much around, it will really bring them information that grounds them again and
mhm,
really brings them down again. Like, okay, but like that's kind of the reality of all the information that you're floating in.
yeah,
So it's really beautiful in essence that you're actually working to uh, yeah, to actually create balance, no matter like the perspective where somebody is coming from, that is all about recentering, recalibrating in a way the
yeah,
position that we're in as a human
yeah.
being.
Yeah, and we always bring them back to the now. You
Yeah,
know, we always say you've explored these past lives and we did it to gather information, but the current life that you're living now is the most important life of all because you're focused on it now. And it's so interesting. I was thinking when you were just talking then about balance and grounding and how when you work with the higher self, when the person's under and you're connecting directly with the higher self, that individual's consciousness has been put directly to one side and you're speaking directly with the subconscious, their higher self. It's so interesting how the information that comes through from this place is very, very basic, always around a theme. And you can ask all these different questions, and the subconscious, the higher self, will generally keep offering the same answer in a different way until it gets to the point where it just goes, just have trust, or just have faith, or just surrender. You know, it's so interesting. And you think, oh, the higher self is going to offer me something like that I could never comprehend, something just huge, but it doesn't. It offers a really simplistic, grounded way to move forwards. And I'd say 99.9% of my clients get told by the higher self to meditate.
yeah, yeah. And again, the practice to be in the present. Yeah,
Hmm. Yeah,
yeah, wow, amazing. Really
yeah.
love it. And it brings me to just one more question as well to maybe get some more understanding in the aspects of the soul as well. That I once called you for some personal reasons as well about imprint lives, because now we talked about karma, and there is also like parts of our soul that we did experience as a soul. But then, what is an imprint life, or how do you
Mm.
place that in the picture?
Yeah. So an imprint life, from my understanding,
Yeah.
If we go back to the soul contract, which is obviously or not obviously, it is an agreement that we put in place as a soul when we're in the alternative dimension of spirit, if you want to call it that. The place at which you make choices around what you want to learn, the reason why you're coming to have a life. And part of that agreement that you put in place, which is obviously an energetic agreement, where you might choose particular individuals that you're going to have experiences within this life. For example, mum, dad, we know that that's a choice. We choose them to provide foundations for the experience, that the learning that we want to do. If a soul chooses to come into a life where it's had very little experience of that particular subject that it wants to explore more of in its next life, it can go and have an imprint life applied to its memory bank, if you like. And the reason for that, so say for example, a soul made a choice to come in and have a life as a president of the United States.
Yeah.
In all of the lives that it's explored before, it's never held a role of that magnitude. It's had support roles, it's had experiences maybe in political environments, but it's taking on this huge challenge. In order to prepare itself for that challenge, it can go to what I can only imagine to be an energetic memory bank of life experiences. And it has to go through a selection process. I feel like it has to go through a qualification process of working with the councils and saying, this is what I want to do. How can you support me with this? Is there a life memory that I can have imprinted so that I take that experience, although I'll forget it, let's remember, into this life that I can draw on? And the same way that I feel that we sense the reasons why we came in, we sense the things that we need to investigate because we're naturally drawn to them. I feel like the same thing applies when we have an imprint life offered to us, this memory which will help to support us in the next life that we choose to do. Although we will forget the specifics, we will be offered the information in one way or another.
And
Whether it's through, whether it's through senses, whether it's through like you had that memory visualization in meditation or doing plant medicine or in regression, whatever it is, when the mind has been opened up, then it accesses that information because you need it, because it's something that you needed in order to support you on the path that you're currently on.
Yeah. And actually, in a way, to offer the contrast of the experience or the goal that you try to achieve, or the mission that you put yourself on as a soul, without the need to experience that whole experience by itself, then. And simply an implant to achieve your goals without the need to experience it fully, like.
Exactly, yeah. And as a regression therapist, if somebody comes to me and they have had an imprint life, I won't know.
There is no difference in it, or
There's
it's
no
almost
difference.
Yeah.
No difference. And Dolores did a lot of work around this, and she's like, you know, how will I know if the person that I'm working with has had an imprint life? And subconscious higher self said you won't, and it doesn't matter, because as far as that soul is concerned, it has been a real life, and they have to believe it's been a real life, because otherwise they wouldn't have such a deep knowing, you
Mm.
know. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The important thing is the effect that
Yeah.
that memory has on the soul and its growth and its evolution, really.
Yeah.
Mm.
What do you do with it now, today, in the present moment again? Back
Yeah,
to ground.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, beautiful. Well, and then it brings me like, yeah, what if people that are listening now to our conversation, like, where can they find you if they want to get in touch with you and get a
yeah,
taste? You know?
absolutely. So I have a website which is www.aninatherapy.co.uk, and then I'm Anina Therapy on Instagram. I've got a YouTube channel which has got a whole bunch of videos on it. That's Georgina Joel Russell, so you can find that there. I'm also on Facebook as Anina Therapy. So yeah, each of those places has contact details. If people are interested in QHHT, then I always offer a free telephone consultation. Normally go deep dive into, you know, what somebody's looking to achieve from a session, where they're currently at, real talk about what the session offers, the technicalities around the process itself. So then there's also this energetic connection that can take place, and then somebody can decide from that hours worth of telephone conversation whether I'm their person or not.
Yeah. And it's something you only do in person, eh? Like, this is not a service you have online, eh?
No, we're not allowed to do QHHT online. You can do group regressions online. And the reason why we can't work online is from a safety perspective, because if somebody was to, for example, move away from being able to hear my voice, because my voice will be what directs the person and what brings them out, if they were to move away from the microphone and they couldn't hear me anymore, then they would be kind of like wandering around in their quantum space, and I wouldn't be able to bring them out. So that's why it's safe in a group environment, because you'll have one or other person around you that can support that. But also it's interesting because when somebody's under, I can't physically touch them. It's another QHHT rule. When somebody's actually in that multidimensional space, if if there was a physical contact, it would disturb them. It would be so jarring for them, that it would be not a nice experience. So there's lots of safety aspects to QHHT as well, and it's always done face to face.
Well, beautiful. I will definitely put everything in the descriptions as well. And
I would love to facilitate a session for you. I wished you lived closer.
yeah, well, who knows about the traveling when it comes up and how we are continuing our journey as well.
Yeah.
Recently, I've been getting in touch with a healer as well, who is doing ceremony tours in Europe and so on.
Have you?
Still looking for new locations as well. I don't know, maybe we end up even in the UK or are able to visit like that as well. But definitely keep on it. We will meet somewhere along in the future.
Yeah,
Like the
we
East.
have to. I
Yeah,
I feel like we've all had past lives together for sure, you know.
yeah,
And I felt like that when I connected with Deborah for the first time, and I definitely feel like this is a soul family connection. Mm,
yeah, same. I had a similar conversation with Leon before our interview as well, and it's the same feeling here.
yeah,
Uh, it's more, the more we accept ourselves, the more we get in touch with our soul family again.
yeah, yeah.
So,
It's beautiful. Yeah, it's really special. Oh, I've had such a lovely time chatting with you.
Likewise, likewise. It was really awesome to have the space or be able to hold the space to have this conversation. Yeah, to share some on your experiences and the work that you do, and to put it in the spotlight.
Well,
It's
thank you for offering me the opportunity to talk about the work. You know, I feel passionate that everyone should experience this at least once in their lives.
uh,
Uh, yeah, it's very special work and I love it.
well, I want to wish you a lot of good luck and many blessings to keep on going on the directions that you're floating.
Thank you. Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you so much. I'm sending you so much love.
You to take care and let's talk soon.
Definitely. All right, darling. Send my love to Deborah.
I
Bye-bye.
would love to
Bye,
leave now.
sweetheart.
Bye.